It's always great to have Shane come back because he always gives us such a great program. And he is from Montana, but his grandparents lived right down here at the end of the street, right by the museum. And that would be Wilson and Mary Wilson. Moreland.
Yes.
Yes, and he's got a great story about the mantle. I did not know the relationship that she was with the Bradford family.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a whole nother great story.
That's, yeah. Yeah, she was a direct descendant of William Bradford, and she grew up in Massachusetts. And during World War II, when they were making Liberty ships all over the country, they got sponsors and they named them after historical figures, and they did it one for Governor William Bradford, the head of the Pilgrims, and she was a kid, a young woman at the time, and she christened the SS William Bradford, and my father's over there, her eldest son, and we still have the christening bottle on our mantelpiece. So that story's in the book too, but anyway.
Thank you.
So yeah, I remember sledding down this hill and everything else. So it's always good to come back to Bighorn. So.
Okay, I'm going to turn the program over to Shane. He has this great interest in H.P. Williams, and I shared whatever I could from the Ostrom collection that we have on the Custer Wolf. But I'm going to just say the Custer Wolf is an amazing story, but so are all the other wolves. You've got the one from Oregon View, the Powder River, the Wolf Mountains, and most of them are in the book. But the thing about George Ostrom is that he typed the history and he sent it off to researchers back in the day. George was aware that there was going to be some of these wolves that were going to go extinct. So he would go and take the pups out of the dens and he sent them back privately to a place back in Pennsylvania. Some of those pups, they are the ancestors of the dogs, the wolves that are in Yellowstone. So it's because of George that we have wolves in Yellowstone, and he passed about a year after they reintroduced the wolves, I think. He was still living to see that. He was eradicating the wolves in the 20s, but he saved the pups, and then they came back to Yellowstone, and he was still alive when they did that. And then we had researchers at the Wyoming Room call us from all over, wildlife biologists. They wanted to know what was going on with coyotes. They never had heard the stories. And I believe this Custer Wolf was the one that employed the coyotes that were slaves to the wolves. And so it was George Ostrom's story, so well written, that these biologists learned about it maybe in the last 10 years, what George had written. So I turn it over to you, Shane. Thank you.
Okay. This was working. Okay, yeah, no, okay. Yeah, Judy pretty much ruined everything now, so thank you and goodbye. Okay, so it's great to be back, and it's great to see so many familiar faces. If you don't know, my name is, and I don't know if I'm going to be covering the display here. I'll try to move around a little bit, but if not, just imagine it. Okay, my name is Shane Dunning, if you haven't heard it, and I'm a local historian. I currently reside in Bernie, Montana. I was raised in Sheridan, and I went to Sheridan High School, and later on to the universities of Wyoming and Oklahoma. Like Judy said, my grandparents were Mary and Wilson Moreland, who lived several decades in this building right next to us. I write local history stories for the Powder River Examiner, the newspaper in Broadus, Montana, and I've also published more serious articles for Montana, the magazine of Western History. Last year, I published a collection of my stories in a book entitled Big Skies and Bygone Days. And When Judy approached me about this opening on their schedule, we discussed several stories from the book, and she selected the story of H.P. Williams and the Custer Wolf, because obviously she's got there's some tie-in there. This subject has several local ties, some of which I didn't know until Judy and I got together, including Judy's book on George Ostrom, which has been presented already, and George Ostrom's family is present for this presentation. I'm so happy to see him, and we just met, and I look forward to talking more with him. So, the Custer Wolf is dead. That's, as you can see, this is a press release dated January 17th, 1921 by the United States Department of Agriculture Press Service. This story and this press release was picked up by literally hundreds of newspapers all across the country, describing the nearly 6-month effort of Harry P. Williams to eliminate perhaps the most calculating and vicious livestock killers nature has ever produced. This press release, entitled "World's Greatest Animal Criminal Dead," does not mince words. It says, "He was the master criminal of the animal world. Throughout the region around Custer, South Dakota, that day, the telephone lines were busier than they were on the day the armistice was signed. For 9 years, this wolf had lived as an outlaw, the cruelest, most sagacious, and the most successful animal outlaw that the range country had ever known. His cruelty was surpassed only by his cunning. He killed with the refinement of animal ferocity." So while this press release may seem a bit dramatic, it's less so than we might think. By the time of his death, the Custer Wolf had killed over $25,000 worth of livestock in 1920s money. The massive $500 reward and the efforts of several talented government hunters, along with hundreds of amateurs, failed to bring him down. Finally, in 1920, the USDA Biological Survey, that's what the forerunner of today's Fish and Wildlife Service was, the Biological Survey, ordered its best hunter, 44-year-old H.P. Williams, to the Black Hills with orders to, quote, "stay after the wolf until he was taken, no matter how much time was required." Now, the Custer Wolf's demise has been discussed before. While I'll describe those events as well, these stories mainly focused on how the wolf was tracked down and killed. What was not discussed nearly so much was the man who did the deed. In fact, there was a 1988 article in Field and Stream about the Custer Wolf, and the unfortunate author says, "The historical record tells us almost nothing about him," meaning H.P. Williams, "not even his first name." Now, that's not quite true, but while Williams' obscurity wasn't that large, it's true that most articles and stories had few details about Harry Percival Williams, and this is where my research, and it turned out Judy's got some more to add to it, that can add to this story. So, Harry Percival Williams was born in Elbert County, Colorado in 1876. Already an excellent horseman in his early 20s, he came to Buffalo, Wyoming around 1900. And he recalled to Bob Helvey, because yes, he was interviewed by Bob Helvey, that while at the Sheridan Inn, he hung his new hat on the rack before entering the dining room. When he exited, he found his hat was gone. The proprietor of the inn told him, "Tom O'Day has your hat. He's drinking and mean. Don't bother about it. I'll get you another hat." Williams's reply was, "You won't get me another hat." After a brief discussion, the horseman punched O'Day right from my knees up under the jaw, and he went down and out, and I picked up my hat, took the gun off him, and handed it over to the barkeeper. What Williams had no idea was that Tom O'Day was a notorious member of the Hole-in-the-Wall gang. The two would meet later in a saloon, and the outlaw acknowledged his being in the wrong and apologized. And Williams recalled to Bob Hill, he was a pretty good guy. I'd like to take a moment to highlight my use of an interview from the Robert Helvey tapes. As we just heard, Judy and others here have done a great deal of work on this extraordinary collection. And this important work will ensure that Bob Helvey's incredible foresight will continue to benefit present and future historians. I personally have relied on the Bob Helvey papers and throughout my career and will continue to do so. As I mentioned, they're all stored at the Heritage Center in Laramie, and the Wyoming room has quite a number of them. And this is Bob and Marilyn, way back in the day. H.P. Williams, and took a while for me to find this out. Turns out Williams was also part of the committee that established the Powder River Cattleman deadline in 1908. Where it says, this was an actual formal agreement by 8 sheepmen and 9 cattlemen, I believe. It says that it's hereby agreed that the following line shall be and is hereby recognized by all and between all cattlemen and all sheepmen interested in said range of Lower Powder River and vicinity as a boundary between said sheep range and said cattle range. And this was the deadline that was plowed throughout this country. I didn't know even after I published the story about him, I found this one out later. H.P. Williams was one of the signatories to this. So, like many cowboys, Williams spent his winters trapping for bounties, and he quickly developed a reputation for being an effective wolfer.
Jane,
Yes, ma'am.
where did you find that information?
You want me to reveal my sources?
Oh, nice.
My source is this book, Past, Present, and Posterity. And it's got that story of, I'm sure you probably guys want me to tell you this. The signatories to this document were, as according to Patrick J. Walsh, P. Healy Jr., J. G. Oliver, S. J. McNeese, and E. D. Metcalf. The cattlemen were cattlemen of Lower Powder River, Crazy Woman Creek, Fortification Creek, and Wild Horse Creek were represented by M. A. Boyer, L. L. Woodrum, H. P. Williams, George L. Taylor, and E. J. Addington.
Thank you.
So,
That's great.
as many of you know, cowboys only really worked outside the winter months, and so if they needed money or just if they wanted money, one of the things they did in the winter months was hunt for animal pelts. And that was a standard thing, and Williams spent a good amount of time doing that. By 1920, though, he'd gotten so good at it, he was employed by the Biological Survey's Predator Control Program, which gave him some decent income, but also prevented him from claiming bounties, but it was fine with him. While adept at using traps, his preferred method of killing wolves was shooting them with his Springfield rifle. He shot him with a .45 Springfield rifle. Indeed, he became so successful at shooting wolves that people started calling him High Power Williams, a play on the HP initials he often used instead of Harry Percival. The Custer Wolf had already successfully evaded some of the area's most respected hunters. One of them had killed the Custer Wolf's mate and cubs 4 years before. This act, Williams said, disordered the Custer Wolf's life, making him a loner and extremely unpredictable. You might have heard the term lone wolf. That's what it's referring to. When a wolf is out on its own and doesn't have the structure of the pack. He never took another mate, and as his legend grew, people attributed the wolf's seeming cruelty to a depraved need for revenge. The Custer Wolf was known to be trap-wise, what's called trap-wise, eluding trackers' attempts and even springing them purposefully, as if in contempt. Actions like this furthered his growing reputation. However, it was his behavior in later years that drove the public's imagination to an extreme. This time, the Custer Wolf killed far more than what he needed to live. The $25,000 figure mentioned earlier included over 500 domestic animals, and there were reports of him killing several dozen in a single night. Many ranchers gave up trying to kill him and just resolved to wait until he died a natural death. And this is all happening around Custer, South Dakota. You got to be careful about that. There are a good number of places named Custer around here. So now the Custer Wolf seemingly enjoyed mutilating animals, including what's called bobtailing cattle. You might have seen some pictures of this. I tried to get one, but it wasn't very good. They basically tear out the cattle, loses its tail, and it has looks like a bobcat. That's what it's called. That's called bobtailing cattle, and the wolf would directly attack the sex organs of the livestock because, as a lone wolf, instead of not having a pack to pull down a big animal, they went where the lone wolf would go where the animal was vulnerable, and in a big animal like a horse or a cow, that was usually the sex organs. Many of those livestock were left alive, only to be put down when their owners found them. The practice that really got the populace's imagination burning was his habit of killing pregnant cows and eating only the unborn calf. And I'm at a loss to try to figure that one out, unless he at some point just liked the taste. There was something distinct about the taste of an unborn calf, and he just liked it. The Custer Wolf was now more than an intelligent nuisance. He was a demon with 4 legs. It was March of 1920 when H.B. Williams received the telegram from Washington to track this maniac down. The two adversaries jousted with each other for 6 months. Viewing the wolf with binoculars, Williams saw him come up upon a horse herd, and of course they spooked all over the area. That wolf rounded them up like a sheepdog, and then when he had them all bunched up, he just sat there and watched them for a minute, then trotted off. Williams also discovered that his shrewd opponent would evade tracking by regularly employing a nearby mountain mesa topped with rock. From this vantage, he could then change direction without detection. So if he was making tracks, he'd go up to this mountain mesa, and they wouldn't see any tracks, and the smell would dissipate much further in, so they couldn't track him. And then he switched direction. He did this regularly. By October, Williams had discovered that the Custer Wolf now had help, as Judy alluded to, in the form of 2 coyotes who followed him everywhere and scavenged on his kills. Traveling up 100 to 200 yards on the wolf's flank, when danger approached, they would run away, and in this manner warn the Custer Wolf. This was unusual behavior for a wolf, who typically kill coyotes when they can. Williams was initially reluctant to shoot the pair for fear of warning his target. Another time, Williams found some wallows where the Custer Wolf had laid down, and he placed traps in them. And one of them caught the wolf on its side, leaving, quote, a big chunk of fur in the traps and a set of tracks that led clear out of the state. So this area is very close to, on the south, the Nebraska border, and then a little bit longer to the west, the Wyoming border. So we're in the southwest corner of South Dakota, and right next under Rapid City. The hunter described other astonishing acts, including how the wolf got curious about an empty beer bottle laying on its side in a washout. That crazy wolf plowed up a big area playing with the bottle. Apparently, he just wanted to stand it upright because that's how it was when I saw it. Williams described the day he took the wolf down in an interview with Dorsey Woodson that was published in 1961. I kept trying, and one day saw him with an old carcass, probably an old kill. I eased up on him and was just about in position when those blasted coyotes jumped up again. The wolf took off, and this time, though I hated to make noise, I shot the coyotes. Because I didn't want him to know what happened, I dumped the coyotes' bodies in a deep wash and then set some traps around the old carcass. It didn't do any good. He returned the next day, dragged the coyotes up on the rim of the wash, then took the carcass and dragged them over every trap, springing them. So the Custer Wolf was playing with Williams, and he knew it. So now the wily hunter used the wolf's own curiosity against him. Quote, "I took that same old carcass, moved it up the hill a ways and set traps. Sure enough, he moved it back to the original spot and never touched a trap." This is a new house number 14 wolf trap circa 1911. So this is the kind of traps he was using. Then I scooped up a big pile of dirt beside the carcass, as if another animal was fooling it with it. I set a circle to trap out from the carcass, the path I figured he'd follow while looking the situation over. He put his right forefoot smack in the middle of one. About 150 yards away, he jerked the trap against the tree with such force the drag hook snapped loose. Although William's target was now free of the trap, he was also now leaving tracks on the top of the rock mesa. After tracking him for 3 miles, Williams finally found him and shot him dead. Quote, "He's been so lucky that I expected the gun would fail to shoot, but it worked okay. He is smaller than the average male wolf, weighed about 98 pounds and measured just 6 feet from tip to tip. He is an old wolf with fur that is almost white." This is the famous photograph of the Custer Wolf. This is H.P. Williams. This is one of the local ranchers, R.R. Richardson. And this is the Custer Wolf. He's being propped up with a metal frame. This is the little guy that caused all this trouble. The vicious and excessive habits of the Custer Wolf that terrified the local populace are now understood to be the result of sudden disruption of the wolf's natural predatory habits. Wolves are highly intelligent and social animals and highly adaptable. The practice of, for example, the practice of focusing on fresh kills and not returning day upon day to a kill, which people attributed to evil or demons, if you think about it, turns out prevented them from falling victim to traps and poisoning by humans. So it was a common practice of wolfers around there, if they saw a wolf killed, to put traps around it or to poison it in hopes of killing it. But if a wolf is making sure it's fresh before he kills it, he's avoiding that. So these are the kinds of things, if you can step out of the emotion out of it, there comes a logic to it. Though there's some things that are still quite unusual about this case. The practice of surplus killing has also been firmly established as a rare, normal behavior in many mammalian predators. Now then, like I said, I've researched this quite a while, and I was going everywhere, and it turns out most of what I could tell was in Bighorn with Judy. One of the things that amazed me when she talked about this was, like I said, this picture is on the internet. This picture is in Wikipedia. Every book about wolves that's ever been done has a story about the Custer Wolf, and it has this picture on it. If you've read the book, my eyes about popped open when this shows up. This is obviously the same photo shoot. This is H.P. Williams with the Custer Wolf from the side. This picture was in the collection of George Ostrom. George was an employee of H.P. They started about 1919 together, something like that, from what I read, and they worked a lot of times together. George would help him pack up and also shot for him, and then they would split up and come back. So, and then George himself became a very accomplished wolfer, as Judy's already explained. So, like I said, the big thing that's different now is people know a little bit more, or you guys now know more about H.P. Williams than several people who write books on wolves. The tale of the Custer Wolf has had some limited impact on our social culture. A fictionalized, quote, life story of the Custer Wolf. Well, this is a good picture. Dr. Stanley Young was a mammalian biologist, and he wrote the treatise on the wolves of America. And sitting right there is a picture of the Custer Wolf's den. So during those months before the fatal shot, Williams had placed some female scent on his boots, and this got the Custer Wolf a little curious. And so we started building a den. And that's what it looked like. Apparently that went back 50 feet. So, and like I said, that's an interesting picture that I found in Stanley Young's book. Forgot to show that one. Sorry. Okay, here's the book I'm talking about. The Custer Wolf, Biography of an American Renegade by Roger Karras. It was published in 1966. It's a fictionalized biography of the Custer Wolf based on extensive research. It ends with, obviously, Williams shooting. It's not a history all that much of the shooting. It's Karras did a lot of research on wolves, and he imagined this life story culminating in Williams shooting him. So there's several copies of this book, and here's mine. It's got several different covers for it. There's also a restaurant in Custer, South Dakota called the Custer Wolf. I've eaten there. The food's pretty good, although it's a little expensive and it's a little trendy. They'll sell you a t-shirt with their logo, but there's nothing in the restaurant that I could recall about the wolf itself, which is a shame. The local museum there, you'd think would have something about it. It has a badly photocopied newspaper article about the wolf in its taxidermy room, and that's it. So, again, for such an interesting story, there's remarkably little actually out there, and that's why this George's recollections in his collection is something to really be cherished. And as wolves are being reintroduced out in this kind of country, it's important to know what they're capable of so that they can be properly managed. And so that's what's also bringing a lot of interest back in why the wolves were hunted as much as they were, and what the result has been. So, okay, that ends my presentation. This story and more is available in my book, Big Skies and Bygone Days. Available at local bookshops and Amazon for $20. I've got copies for sale if you're interested. I look forward to any questions you guys might have, and thank you very much. All right, so are there any questions anybody have?
Yeah, I got a question.
Sure.
Did he get the bounty money?
No. No. Because he was a hired and an employee of the Predator Service, he was ineligible for bounties. So that's one thing I have been trying to figure out where this hide is, and that's the question. I don't know what happened. H.P. Williams eventually retired to Casper, I think, and I think he passed away there. I was going to write this down. I think it's 75. You think? You know? I think it's 75 or 72, something like that. So, but yeah, so hopefully somebody somewhere has got some old ratty carcass that they don't know why it's in the archives. I don't know. Anyway.
So, is Springfield rifle, was it a bolt action or the old block powder?
It was bolt action. I'm almost sure that kid.
Okay.
Because he had to, he carried it on his horse, and he had to, yeah.
All right.
I think so. Don't give me that look, Mike. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
I think the other thing that was amazing that I read was how many other animals were taken in this whole, while they were after the wolf himself.
Yeah.
Bobcats, fox,
Oh, in terms of HP or in terms of just around the area?
just in terms of all the people that were out killing.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, first of all, predator control, the heyday of it was in the early 1900s. And again, this was a source of income for almost every cowboy that didn't have a job during the winter. And so as a result of it, there was an incentive for them to go ahead and do it. Matter of fact, there was a good deal of fraud alleged, especially in the later years. And then the federal government, John B. Kendrick, was a firm advocate of the wolf eradication program and other predators like coyote and bobcat and mountain lion and that sort of thing. And even from a kid's perspective, magpies. So, I don't know if you guys remember that magpie program.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, I've heard, I'm working on that story. I like that story, that's fun. But, yeah, they list, I think it was it 10 cents for a couple of feet? 25 for a couple of feet?
And
Yeah.
huge jackrabbits.
Yeah. And so, the reason they went against magpies is this was before ivermectin, and because dipping cows and sheep was such a big, laborious and expensive deal, the backs of the cows would get infested with maggots and fleas and flies, and the magpies would go dig them out, eventually cause a big hole in the back of the cow that eventually got infected and caused them to die and then ruined the hide and everything else. So during this period that predator control of cattle was one of the highest priorities of the government, of both federal and local governments. They would have and bounties were a big part of that. Everyone did wolves. It seemed like so. And like I said, bobcats, everything. So, but wolves were the only thing that were hunted to basically to extinction. And then all that happened is that the coyotes filled the role, and now you can't swing a cat without hitting a coyote for a long period of time. And so.
The predators weren't the only thing hunted to extinction, because by the time, at that very same time, all the elk had been hunted out of the big ones.
Yeah.
And the Sherman County Sportsmen's Association was responsible for getting some more elk and bringing them in and transplanting them on the big ones.
Really?
Yes.
Cool.
In fact, they had to round them up, and they couldn't just drive them anywhere, so they had to get them loaded on a train, which had to circle clear around through Nebraska and come back to Sheridan. And it was quite a wrestle. They only lost about 3 or 4 of them to broken legs and stuff, because the elk didn't take you kind of riding in cattle cars.
Yeah.
But there's a signboard down at the Sheridan Park that tells you the story of how the elk were reintroduced to the Bighorn Mountains by the Sheridan County Sportsmen's Association.
Wow. Yeah, those rod and gun clubs were, on the one hand, the arm of conservation, and on the other hand, also an arm of eradication at that point. And in addition to actually either state-supported bounties or federal-supported bounties and hunting. It's an important part of the history of this county and this area.
As long as we're on the thing about people hunting like that, I found a Tusker's cabin. You know who they were?
No.
They were the people that hunted elk for the ivory, and they were pretty secretive. I found one of their huts on Shoshone Pass. It's very well concealed, but these guys hunted the elk for their ivory and then would peddle them off for quite a bit.
Really? Okay. Wow, I haven't heard of that. Wow, that's a lot of, that's a lot of teeth to get purposed. Well, cool. Any other questions?
Thanks.
Like I said, and this is the Bob Helvey tapes make so many of my stories possible. I know it may just sound like a name that Judy and them say every once in a while, but there's gold in our hills, I'll tell you that much right now. So, appreciate everyone's efforts and work on it, and thank you very much.